My wife stopped unloading the car, stared out at the water, and said, "Did we buy a dock while we were in Colorado?" I told her, "Not unless I've started sleep shopping for waterfront construction." We both turned toward the shoreline. There were two boats tied to a dock that absolutely did not belong there. Strangers were walking across it, and bolted right to the end post was an HOA logo. No letter, no phone call, no permission, just a dock, built on property we had owned for 11 years. And the woman who had ordered it didn't seem worried at all. That confidence was about to turn into a very expensive mistake. Now, this wasn't some small, temporary structure. The posts were sunk deep into the lake bed. The decking was treated lumber. There was a rope railing on both sides. At the far end sat a mounted storage box with the Gold Lake View Shores Community Association emblem printed on the front like a trophy. One of the boats had a cheerful flag mounted at the back. The kind people fly when they're feeling festive about being somewhere they absolutely have no right to be. The other boat had a cooler on deck, a big one, the kind you bring when you're planning to stay a while. A man in a polo shirt stood at the far end. One hand shaded his eyes as he looked out over the water, like he was surveying his estate. Carol and I stood in the driveway with our suitcases still sitting at our feet. Then the man turned, noticed us, and gave a small, friendly wave. Relaxed, completely unbothered. The wave of a man who believed he was exactly where he belonged. Carol waved back automatically, the way you do when your brain hasn't quite caught up to reality yet. Then she turned to me and said, "I just waved at a stranger on our dock." "You did," I said. "I need coffee," she replied, dragging her suitcase toward the front door. I stayed outside a moment longer, because zip-tied to one of the posts near the shoreline was a laminated sign. Clean font, professional printing. It read, "Lake View Shores Community Dock for resident use. Please be courteous and enjoy. Please be courteous on my property. Here's the only background you really need. We bought this house 11 years ago. We paid taxes on that shoreline every single year, and our deed describes the waterfront boundary in plain English. Carol chose this house because of the lake view. I signed the papers because of the look on Carol's face when she saw it. That shoreline was ours, and someone had made a very confident decision to act like it wasn't. That someone, I was about to learn, was named Patrice. I should also mention my neighbor Dennis. He's lived 2 doors down for 27 years. When something unusual happens on this street, Dennis doesn't just notice it. He catalogs it, stores it, and can retrieve it instantly like a human security camera with a sense of humor. I called him before I even touched the pile of mail. He picked up on the second ring. "You're home," he said before I even spoke. "Tell me about the dock, Dennis." He took a long breath. "I've lived here 27 years. I once watched a family of raccoons dismantle an entire patio set over one summer, chair by chair, like they had a moving truck coming. I've seen an above-ground pool roll down the street during a thunderstorm, just roll calmly, like it had somewhere to be." He paused. "But I have never seen anything like what happened here while you were gone. Patrice brought in a contractor 10 days after you left. 3-day build, real equipment, even a small barge to set the posts in the lake bed. Our neighbor Frank walked over on day 2 and asked what was going on. Patrice told him, calmly and confidently, that the HOA had community development authority over shared water access areas, and that the project had already been approved at the board level. Community development authority? I repeated. Frank looked it up that night, Dennis said. Couldn't find it anywhere. Now, I thought Dennis was done. He wasn't. She sent a neighborhood email 3 days into the build, he continued. Not to explain, not to ask, just to announce it. The subject line read, "Exciting new community amenity, now open for resident enjoyment." She had announced it like she was cutting a ribbon on a new museum wing. All that was missing was a plaque and oversized scissors. I went through the mail in about 4 minutes. No letter, no notice, no proposal, nothing. What I did have was a voicemail from Patrice herself. Full title included, President of the Lake View Shores Community Association Board of Directors. She described the installation as having gone wonderfully and even ahead of schedule. The community she said, was already embracing this exciting enhancement to our waterfront experience, and she looked forward to connecting with me about our shared vision for the shoreline. She sounded less like a board president and more like someone unveiling an exhibit, which, coincidentally, is exactly how Dennis had just described her. Carol set a coffee mug in front of me, read my face the way 32 years of marriage teaches a person to do, and said, "How bad?" She left a voicemail. I said, like she was announcing a grand opening. Carol sat down slowly. She invented a rule, didn't she? Or stretched one until it snapped. The next morning, I pulled out our original property survey, the deed from closing, and 11 years of county tax records. I was going to find out exactly how far this had gone, and exactly what Patrice had assumed I would never check. At that point, I still hadn't called the sheriff. Honestly, I didn't think I'd need to. 24 hours later, I would realize just how wrong that assumption was. I'd like to tell you, I sat down with those documents, feeling calm and organized. That would be a lie. I sat down with 3 cups of coffee, a reading magnifier Carol bought me 2 Christmases ago, the one I never admit I need, and the kind of focus that only shows up when someone has built a dock on your property and left you a cheerful voicemail about it. The survey came out first. 11 years ago, when we closed on this house, a surveyor had walked every inch of that property line with me. Precise man, the kind who casually uses words like terminus. He had shown me exactly where our land ended and where the lake began. I found his survey in the folder. The dock was sitting 14 feet inside our boundary line. Not close, not borderline, not something a reasonable person could mistake by squinting at a map. 14 feet inside property that had our names on the deed and our address on 11 years of tax bills. I picked up the phone and called Patrice. She answered on the second ring. Bright voice, already winning the conversation before it even started. "Oh, you're back from vacation," she said, like we were reconnecting at a neighborhood barbecue. "I pulled our property survey this morning." I said, "The dock is sitting 14 feet inside our boundary line." There was a half-second pause. Then the brightness came right back. "Well, what we're likely dealing with is a minor mapping discrepancy," she said smoothly. "These things happen with older surveys. We can review it together, as neighbors. As neighbors." I called to report a dock built illegally on my land, and in under a minute she had turned it into a mapping discrepancy we could review casually. Apparently, 14 feet of unauthorized construction now counted as a discrepancy. Good to know. I told her I'd be in touch, hung up, and went back to the documents. Carol appeared in the doorway with fresh coffee. "Well," she asked. "Mapping discrepancy," I said. She set the mug down. 11 years of tax records aren't a discrepancy. "No," I said, "they are not." I kept digging, and here's what mattered. Our deed included riparian rights, the legal rights tied to owning land next to water, control of the shoreline, authority over what gets built there. Our deed was clear. Those rights belonged to us. Then I checked the county records for HOA easements. That would have been the only thing giving them any legal footing. There was no easement. Not current, not expired, not pending. Nothing in 30 years of county records. They had built a dock on private property with no permission, no legal authority, and then put up a sign inviting people to enjoy it. At that point, I still thought maybe Patrice had made a mistake. Moved too fast. Misread something. Got bad advice. I was still giving her the benefit of the doubt. Dennis was about to destroy that idea completely.